Hey guys, it's Lisa, back with another video for you for Lisa Wise Designs. And today we get started on our Christmas crate. This is going to be part one of our crate. So the last couple of days we have been working on the mini album, and all that's left to do here is to throw your Christmas pictures in. I love how this turned out, and I just love this retro looking Santa. You hear that snap with the magnet? I really like how we changed up that background paper for the reindeer. Okay, off to the side. Now we get started with the crate. And I think I said it before, but the other project that I did a couple of weeks ago, where we did a fall crate with the twine handles, if you have that kit or that well, I can't think today. If you have that kit or that tutorial, that size album will also fit in this crate. So you have two different styles albums that you can pull from with both of these. Okay, so let's get started. We'll have today and tomorrow to do this. We won't get all the way through all the decorating, but we'll get a lot done today. So what you want to do is get out your cutting guide. We're starting on page 12. And here at the bottom, you've got all of your measurements. It tells you exactly how to cut out your chipboard. So when I'm cutting chipboard, unless you have a heavy duty trimmer, most of us have these personal trimmers, right? And I keep one just for chipboard. So you don't have to do that, but you do want to have a blade that's just for chipboard because it is going to dull it for sure. So I have all my pieces cut, my A, 2 B's, and 6 C's, but I'm going to give you an example of how to cut this. This is a 52-point chipboard. I guess that's considered medium weight because it's not super thick and it's not really thin, so it's easy to cut with a personal trimmer. So what I'm going to do is go over to 1/2 inch, and I'm going to press down pretty hard. I'm going to go back and forth, okay? And you're going to see it put a cut line in here, but it did not cut all the way through. Almost, but not all the way through. So I'm going to flip it over, put it back on 1/2 inch, or I could line up that little line I can see where my track is and push it through again. Usually, yeah, I only took one try, and then it comes right through. You shouldn't have any issues. You might have a little fraying. I just go with a little piece of sandpaper or a nail file and take that off. Usually I don't have much fraying at all. So that's how I would go about cutting chipboard if you don't have a heavy duty trimmer. So I'm going to keep this piece because we're going to need a couple of 1/2 inch pieces in a little bit. So this is what I had left over from my 2 pieces of chipboard when I cut it down. So you've got some pretty big scraps in case you have an oopsie and you need to recut. So I'm going to put this to the side for now. And I've already cut my pieces, like I say. So I'm going to grab those. So I've got my piece A. It's just one piece. There's no what I'm calling score lines in it, and we'll get to that here with piece B. So here's my 2 piece B's. I've got one done already. What we're going to do is I'm going to flip over on the back of piece B, and I'm going to go over 1/2 inch, and I'm going to cut what I'm calling a score line. I want to be able to bend this chipboard, but I don't want to cut all the way through. So I'm going to grab one of my pieces of chipboard again. This is one of my scraps I had, and I'm going to practice on my board. I want to make a score line, but not all the way through my paper. Now I've done this many times, so I know kind of how to do it and how much pressure to put. I'm not going to put very much pressure, so that's why I would say that you would probably want to practice if you haven't done this with yours. And you just push through, and you want to be able to see a line, but not one on the back. So just use one of your scrap pieces and practice that, because you want to be able to put that score line in there and then be able to bend it backwards and it still hold. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's my scrap piece. So now let's do that with piece B. I've already cut to the right dimensions. I've turned it over. You don't have to do all this writing, but I thought it might be easier for you. This is the back of my piece B. I'm going to put it over at 1/2 inch, and I'm simply going to put a little bit of pressure to make that line, but not one on the back. So that's my B. On my C pieces, I have 5 of them already done. So let's do this one together. On the C pieces, on the front of C, I'm going to do it on both sides. I'm going to go over to 1/2 inch, push up, and we'll turn this all the way around, go over to 1/2 inch, push up, and so now I've got these two score lines on the front that do not go all the way through. So do that on all your piece C's. All right, and then I think I can put this up for now. So I am on the middle of page 13. I'm going to take my 2-piece B's, since this one's already done. Here's the back of B we just did together. So I'm going to fold this toward the front, so your cut line is in front of you, and you're going to fold this to the front where you see the fold. You don't want it to come apart. Okay, now I'm going to straighten it back up. So when I turn it over to the front of B, I can see that score line. So I'm going to put a piece of tape between the score line and cut edge, closest to the cut edge as possible without going over the cut edge. And I am using score tape. Any type of double-sided tape that you have that is strong will work. You want either 3/8 inch, 1/4 inch, or if you're doing millimeters, there's a 6, an 8, and a 10. All of those are less than 1/2 inch, and all of those will work. Just don't use 1/2 inch. Anything less than half will do. So there's our 2 B pieces. So the tape is on the front of B, the cut was on the back, and on C, the cut's on the front, and the tape is also on the front. So the cut and the tape is on the front of C. And there are pictures of this in your cutting guide, and it's all explained for you there. Sometimes people learn really well just looking at pictures, and sometimes people need a video, and sometimes a combo of both. So I'll try to give it both to you there. All right, burnish. So now I've got all of my pieces ready. I'm gonna put my C pieces out of the way. So now let's line up and do the base, yay, of our crate. So A piece in the middle, 2 B pieces on each end with the tape facing up. Now I'm just going to kind of bend this back where it is straight. So all we're going to do is take the tape backing off. Take this tape liner off. Okay. Come on. And then the A piece is going to go on top of the B piece. So I'm just going to turn it around just so it's easier for me to do. But see, you can see that score line. You want this A piece to kiss that score line. So it might be easier to bend it, and you don't want it to go over, but you want it to kind of kiss up to it without going over, and then center it top to bottom. Just take your time till you get a pretty good spot. All right, and then burnish it really well down, just like that. Okay, so this was like this. Whee! A piece is in the center, and then your B is on the end. We're gonna do the same thing here. We're going to take this A piece and put it on top of B, but I'm going to flip it around just so I can get to it. And I'm going to go ahead and bend it. I think that might be a little easier. And then just butt it up against it, but then pull it back just a hair. We want it to kiss the score line without going over. There we go. Okay, so you can kind of see our crate taking form. And then you can see on the bottom where this kind of sticks out a little bit. And we're going to take care of that in just a second. So flip on over to page 14. It kind of gives you an example of what we just looked at here, that U shape, and it tells you how to cut your mats. Now we're going to be matting as we go along because it's a little more difficult when it's in this 3D state. When it's on the sides, when it's down in there, when it's on the sides here, it's a little more difficult. So we'll just kind of take it easy and mat as we go. Just be a little easier on us. So I've already got my mats cut to exactly these dimensions here, and I'm using the exact same paper that I did here. So let's do that. So this is the inside. We're going to flip this over, and this is the part we're going to be working on where it says the back of B if you labeled yours, and this is the rough edges right here that comes out. So where's my pieces? Here we go. All right, so here's my pieces. I've got my Christmas trees. I'm going to be working in this direction here because this is going to be the top of my crate. And let me get a piece of paper because I know that's hard to see black on black. There we go. So this is going to be here. I've got probably less than 1/8 inch border all the way around because I really wanted there to be not so much border showing, more pattern paper. And then this will bridge the gap here. So just keep in mind, right here, way up here is my score line. So this is where it's actually bending. So this is all you're going to be able to see here. So this is what I'm matting up against. And you'll be able to see yours really well. See, if I were to turn it, you can see. So just keep that in mind. I've got these where I can, there'll be a little gap between the two larger pieces. And that centerpiece will bridge that gap. So put this about 1/8 of an inch from the top and the two sides. Put that down. Would you believe when I was working on this one day this week, I got a paper cut just from burnishing the paper with my hands instead of my bone folder. Isn't that crazy? I could see it if I was working on a straight edge or scissors, but just the paper, it's like this, and it was painful. Okay, and then I've got this piece. It says 1/2 of an inch in your cutting guide. I think I actually cut mine about 3/8 of an inch to make it a little beefier, but 1/2 an inch would still do. I think, because I did 1/2 an inch on this one. You can see it's just a hair smaller. Sometimes 3/8 of an inch is just perfect. I don't know why that is. It's very pleasing to the eye, in my opinion. Put this here. So of course you could do one long piece if you have a favorite piece of this pattern paper. You just do one long piece, but I really think that adds something to it to have, you know, 3 pieces here. I think it's really pleasing to look at. All right, so I'm just going to flip this around. I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side. And you could choose different patterns, of course, on each side. There was a lot to choose from. And then this paper pack also had some pretty big, there's a couple of sheets that have some big patterns. And they were a little bit more difficult to use when we're making a mini album. But there was some really pretty papers. Oh, sorry. In this, on the backs of those. So I'm gonna keep in mind where that score line is down here. Okay, and then this is the center. I've used so much of my art glitter glue that when I sit it down, it topples over. I guess I need to put some more in it. And I have a refill bottle. I just haven't done it because it was giving me such an issue yesterday where it kept wanting to come out the sides. Okay. All right. Very cool. So, still working on the bottom where this rough edge is. You're going to look in your little goodies. And you have this little packet here of Velcro loops. So you don't have the rough part, just the loops. And we're going to use these to help even out the bottom and to keep it from scratching your furniture. So I'm just going to put 2 butted up right up against the edge of this chipboard where it comes together on both sides. And then I'm going to put 2 in the center. That's going to kind of help level this out, like I say, and to keep this from scratching your furniture or bookshelf, wherever you decide to store this. Here we go. And I'm going to give this a little burnish. All right. Now, we're just flying through this. So, on the bottom of page 14, it tells you to cut 3 mats of the same size to mat the inside of this crate. I can't talk. So, I chose the reindeer and the sleigh and the Santa. And be careful, and it says this in the cutting guide, to make sure you look at your orientation, because these are going on the sides. So I wanted mine, you know, to be in this orientation this way, and then the bottom to be in this orientation, if that makes sense. So that's where I cut it. So go ahead and cut them out, but do not put the sides on yet. You want to make sure we finish the album, because we're going to be putting on this little mini drawer pull, and it's got brads that come out the back, and so we're going to hide those brads with paper. So this is one of the last steps, so we're just going to put these to the side, just have them ready for the ending of this. So that's going to probably be tomorrow. But this one we can go ahead and put on. I'm just going to check the size real quick to make sure it's not too long. I think it's perfect. Because the one time you don't dry fit it is the time that you looked at your directions wrong, right? And cut it. Okay, Santy. Very cute. There we go. And burnish into place. Very cool. All right, so now we're going to flip on over to page 15, where it tells us do not glue your mats. It's also going to tell us, I'll go ahead and put my pin in my glue, how to cut the C pieces. We've already done that. Got my C pieces ready, and it also tells you how to cut your mats for your C pieces. So you can see on page 15 exactly what papers I use to cut, because you're going to need 12 sheets or little strips here to cover. So it shows you exactly which ones I use. I have 2 of the Christmas trees, 2 Santas, and then I did, what, 4 of the snowflake and 4 of the red snowflake. Blue snowflake, red snowflake. That's kind of hard to say. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. I was thinking, do I have one? Oh no, they were stuck together. Let's say, did I miscount? So there's that. Now we're going to start putting this together. We're just flying right along. So I'm going to use my Tim Holtz ruler. If you have a ruler that has a grid on it, this is going to be very helpful. And then I'm going to use a marker just so you can see on my black paper. What you're going to do is butt this. I'm on B, right where we just matted the center. I'm going to butt my ruler up right until it stops where that chipboard is and come up to the top about 1/2 of an inch down, and I'm going to make a mark at 1/8 of an inch. And then I'm going to make a mark, what was the second one at? Let's see, 2 5/8. So 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 1/8 above 2 1/2. So it's right between 2 1/2 and 2 3/4. So you're going to make those 2 marks. And I'm going to come down to the bottom and just kind of do the same thing so it's a little easier to line up. 2 1/2 plus 1 is 2 5/8. So the last one we won't have to make a mark because it'll just line up with the top here. You're going to flip it around, do the exact same thing. 1/8 of an inch here, 2 5/8, 1/8 of an inch, and 2 5/8. All right, easy peasy. Done. So now we can start putting our slats on. That's on the top of page 16. So I'm kind of show you how we're going to put them on and what it will look like when we are done. So it's going to kind of look like a spider. I'm going to put my mats out of the way, and I am going to work, let's see, how is this the easiest? I'm going to work like this with the top of it out of the screen. So I'm going to take my first C piece, and I'm going to, the cut was on the front side and so is the tape, and I'm going to bend to the back. I'm not trying to tear this off, I'm just trying to get the bend started because it's going to glue just like this. It's going to glue at a 90-degree angle. 1 second, let me get a drink of water. Thank you. Now, I'm going to take off my tape backing. Let's dry fit it first. What I'm going to do is, since I bent this backwards, I can see my score line. It might be hard for you to see, but that score line is going to line up with the cut edge, and the side is going to line up with that mark. So it's going to go right here. I'm going to line up with the mark as best I can. I'm going to line up the cut edge with the score line so that eventually it's going to look like this. And there are some really good pictures of this, like I say, on 16 if it's a little hard to see. So I'm going to take off one side of the tape backing. I'm going to line it up with the mark that I made on it and try my best to line up the cut edge. If it's not perfect, I would not worry about it. Mine has never been perfect. You can also use this grid if you have one on your desk to help line it up. But you know, it's a handmade item. It's only as good as the cuts that we make and how well we line it up. It's never going to be perfect, but it's going to turn out fine. We'll be able to hide a lot of these flaws. I'm going to do the second piece on the second mark, lining up the score line with the cut edge. Okay, pretty good. Burnish them both down really well. Just easy, easy. Turning them backwards to get them started, and then back even, and then, Now this one, last one, is going to line up with the very end. So make sure I can see. And I'm just going to line the top with the top side and with the cut edge as best I can. There we go. So your slats should be almost equal distance apart. May not be perfect. I think I really got that one over the line, but it's okay. All right. So we're going to just start with the other side. Just bend it back straight. And we'll start putting this one on. Okay. Sorry if my head's in the way. It's a little difficult to see. You'll have to tell me if you're one of the lucky ones that got into Maymay's Made It Con classes. I saw this week where they're shipping everything out. It's super exciting. I cannot believe that it's almost here. It's sad that we can't all be in the same room, but at least we can still craft together. I think it's going to be fun. Very excited about the Make It Marathon. Let's see how that turns out this year. Instead of a Make It Go Round, where you do 12 projects, one every 15 minutes. It's fun in one room. It's been really funny. So now it kind of looks like a spider, but just with 6 legs, right? So I guess I would call that an arachnid. So I'm going to kind of turn it this way just so we can see. Now we're going to do some matting. Be careful on your orientation. For example, if you're using snowflakes, there's really no orientation, so it does not matter. If you're using Santa faces, which I am, there is definitely an orientation. You do not want him to be upside down. So I'd be careful with that. So what I'm going to do is use the 4 red snowflakes, and the 2 Santa faces is the ones I'm using right now in the center. So this is the top right here. You can see this is the center. So I'm going to draw an arrow here that points toward the top, and that's the orientation that we want to do with our pattern paper. Because when we pull this up and it comes up this way, this is what you're going to see, and it'll all make sense. So before I forget, I'm just going to go ahead and do Santa. I already have my papers cut, like I said, and I used the black soot distress ink. It's really hard to see on this black. All right, so just try not to go over the score lines, which this paper's cut almost to the same length between the 2 score lines. So you might want to dry fit that one first. Let me try this one. Yeah, it might be almost the same size. Right between those score lines. So just take your time. Make sure your orientation is correct. I'm gonna bend mine up. That helps me see that a little bit better. And I'm not going over the score lines. There we go. So now when we're done, see, this will come in here and our Santas will not be upside down. Yeah, ask me how I figured that one out, right? Yeah, once you glue something on upside down, you put it together like, ew. Then you usually don't forget the next time. Or you do, and that just makes you extra aggravated at yourself. You're like, really? How can you do that another time? I was making one project where you had to put the mechanism inside the box you were making before you closed the box. And I am not kidding you when I say 3 times in a row I got interrupted with life. The dog barking, you know, the phone ringing, something happening on TV, and I closed one box up after another before putting that mechanism in. And I have to cut a new box. And I made the box again, and I still did it again. I did it 3 times in a row. So, needless to say, I went on to bed that night without finishing that project till the next day. So, don't feel bad if you ever have one of those days. It happens to all of us, and it helps to know that we have all those days. Even though I designed it and had made it, you know, half a dozen times, still messed it up. It's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So, if we were not having to put outside hardware on this, like I was saying, these drawer pulls, now would be the time you would want to put down that that extra piece of what am I saying? The mat here. But we want to go ahead and cut some extra pieces, because now when you put your mat, you're going to have this big empty space, right? That's going to be a big hole because this is taller. So I'm just going to cut some pieces to kind of help lift this up when we start matting. And that'll make sense in a minute too. So just cut you 3 or 4 pieces of 1/2 inch chipboard out of your leftovers. So I'll give you some rough dimensions here. This is like 1.5 inches by 1/2 inch, both of those. And this one is 3 inches by 1/2 inch though. So I'm going to put one here and one here. And I'm going to do that on both sides. I'll go ahead and cut them. So basically I'm cutting that 3 inch piece that you had left over. I'm cutting 1/2 inch off. Alright, and then I'm cutting one of those in half again. Oh, come on. There we go. I'll keep this for the other side. So before I start putting this together, I'm going to go ahead and do this because it'll be much easier while it's open. I'm just trying to even it out. When I put the mat down, toward the end of this, we'll just put glue on all these raised chipboard pieces. It'll look like it has like foam, right? And don't worry, if you have a We Are Memory Keepers hole punch, it'll go straight through this chipboard. All right. Now, I don't trust myself enough to go ahead and put it on the B side. I'm just going to have to work this one over first. So let's see. Let's make sure where we are. Yeah, we're on the top of 17. So this is a little difficult to show, but I'm just going to pull this up together. And you may have to finagle it what works better for you. But what works for me is kind of having these on the top hanging down, and then the one that I'm gluing to on the bottom. And what you're going to do is simply bend these at a 90-degree angle and glue them to the chipboard. So you have your marking so you know where they go. So what I like to do, like I say, is turn mine over. I'm sorry if you can't see. I'll try to do a little better here. So I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to bend this, and I'm going to put it down toward the bottom, and I'm going to line it up on that mark that we had. So this part's a little unruly, as you can tell. But if you just take it slow and easy and just line up your marks, it'll go well. The first one's going to be the hardest to get on because it's a tight fit, but it is supposed to be. So I just bent my chipboard, and I'm going to have to turn this over and then push it toward that marking that I have. And then I'll look up at the top and kind of see. And it looks like, you know, maybe like it's too big, like I don't have enough room. You are fine. Just put it down. I don't know if I can get it off my finger. It's stuck. And once you kind of get that in place, take a look at that and just burnish, whoops, the first one on. And then from there it gets easier. You go to your second one. Fold it down and just kind of line it up with where that mark is, and then at the cut edge. And that one goes on much easier. So if you see that you start having a little bit of splitting, don't worry about it. I've had that happen too. I've got a little bit now where my chipboard's wanting to come apart a little bit. I'm just going to put some art glitter glue on it, and it will be fine. And the last one should line up at the very end, flush with the top of the piece. So there we go, just like that. So one of these, which one of you? Of course, now I'm not be able to find it. Okay, one of you I saw had some splitting. And now I don't see it. Okay. So I'm just going to start on the other side. I'm going to start at the bottom. This is a tight fit. I'm going to try to get an 1/8 of an inch from the bottom. There we go. That one seemed to go on a little bit easier. Yes, you can see where making those lines really help, because you think you're getting it on there straight till you see kind of where your line is. You're like, oh, well, I'm not quite there yet. And under the top. Cool beans. Isn't this adorable? I am in love. Okay, so last steps on this one is grab those 3 little chipboard pieces, and you're gonna have to put your hand inside of the crate. So I tried not to do this, you know, I did this as little as possible. So this one, I'm just gonna push toward the back. Put this long one in the center, just like we did on the other side. And of course there are pictures on page 17, but I'm doing it just like I did the other side, just so I've got something to glue to when it comes time to mat. But we're not gonna mat until we get that hardware on. Okay. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now, the last steps for today is let's go ahead and mat, since we already have them cut on the front and back. And we'll come back tomorrow and we're going to do all this decorating. We're going to make this tag. We're going to make these. We're going to put our hardware on. So, what do you think? Quick and easy? I think so. I think this is a pretty easy project. If you just sit and you take about 30 minutes or so to pre-cut your chipboard, then cut your mats. It took me about 30 minutes to do all my trimming tonight. Cut everything out, and then it makes for a really fun experience to just sit and play. I hate having to pull my trimmer and my scoreboard in and out, in and out. But we didn't have to score anything on this. We used our cut lines as score lines because of the chipboard. So this is kind of an unusual technique. I know most people would use binding strips, and I have done that too before, but this works well with this 52 point chipboard. If you use anything thinner than that, if you use some really thin chipboard, like 30 point, you're gonna cut right through it, because I made one in that. That was the first thing that I did, and that did not work. It was a big mess for me. You would, but it would work fine if you used binding strips, where instead of like what we just did, where we cut the edges, where you just use pieces of chipboard and put them together. And we may do that technique in the future. But I thought this was easy enough. So cute. We don't even have to really ink. Don't have to ink our chipboard like we did on the other project, because it's black. I love that. Well, thank you guys for being here tonight. I hope you are enjoying this project. If you decide to make this, please go over to our Facebook group, Lisa Wise Designs, and show us pictures of what you did, especially if you use different papers. We would love to be inspired by you. If you want to pick up this kit, there are still a few kits available, not many's left, a few kits available over on my Etsy shop. So go and check that out, and all those links are down below. Thank you guys, and I will see you here tomorrow. We'll finish up this crate. Same time, same place. Thanks. Bye guys.